Hello, my name is Lorenzo Servi. I'm a visual artist based in Helsinki. SerraGlia is the name that I use when I work with art. And my background is from graffiti and architecture. I started painting graffiti when I was a teenager, and as a kind of balancing, I wanted to go to the art school, but my parents didn't want to, so I was kind of balancing the boring studies and painting graffiti. And then I managed to go to study architecture, and that was the closest art faculty that I could study. And then, but then of course I wasn't really interested in the design process of the buildings itself. And but I was very interested, on the other hand, in how to represent the space and how architects could communicate their vision through images. So I was very interested in graphic design, illustration, and of course photography. And so during that time I already was kind of making my own project, like a photo-based project, where basically I was exploring the city, the urban landscape, and try to find interesting object along the way to school or to work. I'm always been interested on how technology can change our reality. And before, of course, with the digital cameras. And nowadays, I think also it's very interesting how AI can influence the perception of our reality. And I started working also a bit with the AI, where I was very curious about this new technology. And so I'm starting create my own model and then training this model with a series of my own photograph in the way to teach the machine my style of photographing and my way of see the photographs. And this is Rapid Wonders is an example, recent series that I've been working, where the idea was to, well, usually when you work with digital software, and for example in the architectural visualization, you try to generate photorealistic image. And every time that you have, let's say, a computer-generated image, one of the most common things is start looking to see if it looks real, if it's not looking real, try to find that detail that confirm the idea that is not real image. And so with AI, nowadays you can have almost infinite possibilities of creating all kind of images, even very photorealistic images. And but with this project, I decided to not go towards the photorealism, but more like try to find something between an image that might look a photograph, so real, or something else. So starting with Wrapped Object was a decision to focus on this research, because, as I said, you can create almost everything. And then so by eliminating the object itself, only keeping the silhouette of the object, because you don't really see the object underneath, was kind of a way to focus on the shape, go back a bit in the basic of the perception, and so how we interpret an object just looking at the shape and the silhouette. And of course you can see the texture of the textile that was covering the object, but the main idea was to create object that might look real, or kind of between something fictional and real, with the pseudo photorealistic language. And I started as a kind of experimental project. I thought that probably I would spend 1 week in this project, but then it was so addictive and so interesting to understand how the machine was actually understanding my input, and how the machine was interpreting the drawings I was doing and my own images. And in the end, this project, from 1 week, it became like a 3.5 month project. And once the machine started learning the way I photographing and the way I was looking for representing this wrapped object, and then it started to generate almost infinite series of images. And then that part, I had to say, was also quite addictive, because you could almost spend days just generating images and with very small variation and with like endless possibilities. And sometimes I would start from a simple input from text and then generate it in images. And sometimes I was doing some sketches and very simple sketches. And then the machine, the software, was kind of interpreting them as a 3D shape and then wrapping them. So it was very interesting to see also how the machine was interpreting these sketches and how the machine was then recreating as a three-dimensional object. And for example, this series of 5 pieces were made from the same input and were created one by after the other. So small variation, and this process could continue almost forever, because the machine was trying to interpret it always in a different way, the input I was giving them. Usually I'm quite precise on title the names of the artwork. I always want to give a framework where the person who see the image can kind of narrow his attention to and help to give an interpretation. But in this case, was totally opposite process. I just left as a title of the artworks are just the numbers that the machine gives when it produces the image. And in the way, I felt also quite liberating to not, in a certain way, try to convey a specific message and a specific idea, but just leave the open to interpretation of the image. And that was quite liberating in the process itself and in making also this exhibition. Starting from since 2011, I started also be interested about self-publishing and artist books. And so I started like self-publishing, even like a very small edition, like edition of 3 books, 5, 10. And then lately I founded my own publishing company, other editions, where I use the book as the medium for my own project. And they're not just catalogs of my works, but are projects that are designed to be shaped as a book. So I like to experiment with the format of the book and like to play with the narrative of the book and mixing photograph, images, and then text, and try to give this project some kind of narrative that is much harder to give in an exhibition space. So I'm mainly self-publishing my own works, and I'm also working on a book series called The City's Hours, where it's a collaborative book series where I'm working with different artists and photographers, where basically the idea is to use photography as a way for documenting small details that we can find in the city, and try to expand the visual grammar of the things we can find. For example, the first issue was about chewing gum that you can find in the city. And so through photography, we investigate chewing gums, what kind of shapes they are, and the colors, and kind of scientific way, and to kind of expand the visual vocabulary of things that we find every day, but not really noticing. And the idea of the whole series is about demonstrating that anything can be more interesting than what it looks like. So we start with very ordinary and everyday detail, and try to show them in a different light and a different perspective. The first book that I published with other editions was this, The City Wonders, during the exhibition I had in the Finnish Museum of Photography in 2017. And was basically the first public release of my part of my archive of urban finding. And so a series of images of objects that I found in the city, and with the background digitally removed to give them an aspect of art object. And the book has different sections, marks and tracks, and involuntary sculpture, involuntary paintings, wrapped object, and some of these images were like the base for training the model of this exhibition that I did, Wrapped Wonders with AI.